Listen carefully. In the markets, the greatest weapon you'll ever carry is not your chart, not your ticker tape, not your account size. It's your nerve. And when I say nerve, I mean that part of you that holds steady when prices jump like wild horses and headlines scream disaster. Control your nerve, and you can control your trades. Lose it, and the market will clean you out before you've even had a chance to wonder what went wrong. Do you know why so many fail even after they learn the mechanics? It's because their nerves are weak. They trade with their eyes, yes, but their guts are trembling. And a man who trembles has already lost before he's begun. You ever notice how easy it is to spot a chart pattern after the fact? You look back, you see the breakout, the retest, the clean run upward, and you tell yourself, I would have taken that trade. But when you're in the moment with your own money on the line, do you still see it so clearly? Or do you start second guessing? Thinking maybe this isn't the one, maybe you should wait for more confirmation, maybe the market's out to trick you. That's where nerve steps in. Charts don't lie, but your own fear will make you lie to yourself. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the market never argues. The tape tells the truth, but the man reading the tape, he often lets his imagination get in the way. When prices run against him, he starts to hope. When prices move in his favor, he gets greedy and wants more than the market will give. Do you see the problem? Hope and greed, they're the enemies of nerve. And if you can't master them, you can't master trading. Tell me, how many times have you seen a profit turn into a loss because you couldn't take it when it was there? You know, one of the hardest lessons I had to learn was that sitting tight often pays more than trading active. The market will tempt you every hour of the day with moves that look promising, but most of them are noise. If you jump at every shadow, you'll waste your energy, your capital, and your nerve. The professional way is to wait for the real swing, the move that fits the bigger picture. But do you have the nerve to wait? Can you stand still while others chatter, while others seem to be making money, while prices jiggle and jump like they're about to run away without you? That's the test. The young trader, he thinks action means progress. He wants to trade every hour, every setup, every squiggle on the chart. But markets are not built for the restless. They're built for the patient. And patience is nothing but nerves stretched over time. The man who sits through the noise, who waits for the chart to line up, who only acts when the probabilities favor him, that man has the nerve that pays. Do you? Or do you chase the feeling of always being in a trade? I remember times when I would take a position and the market would immediately swing against me. Not just a tick or two, but enough to shake the confidence of any man. The old me would argue with the tape, telling myself I was right and the market was wrong. You ever done that? Of course you have. Every trader has. But the market is never wrong. Only your nerve breaks, and when it does, you either cling to a losing position until it buries you, or you jump out of a winning one too early because you couldn't stand the pressure. Both are fatal in the long run. It's not the act of buying or selling that matters. Most it's the act of holding your ground when the time is right. A chart will give you signals. Volume will give you confirmation. But without nerve, you won't act on either. You'll freeze when you should strike, and you'll panic when you should hold. Isn't that what happens to most? They know enough, they've read enough, but when the price starts to run, their hand shakes on the button. That's not trading. That's gambling with emotion. Let me tell you, the market rewards the man who can look at it without flinching. Imagine a chart breaking out of a long consolidation. Volume comes in, price lifts, the trend confirms. You take your position. The very next day, price dips, testing your resolve. Do you sell because you're afraid, or do you trust the pattern, trust the volume, trust the plan you had before fear walked into the room? That's where nerve decides if you'll be rich or ruined. Which choice would you make? Understand this. No great fortune was ever built on shaky nerve. Every man you hear about who made millions in the market did it because he could hold steady when others cracked. It's not about being fearless. No man is without fear. It's about controlling that fear, taming it so it doesn't rule your hands. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be steady enough to follow your system without breaking under pressure. Ask yourself what's harder, learning the chart patterns, or learning to sit tight when they test you. The truth is, anyone can read a book and learn a head and shoulders from a double bottom. That's child's play. The real test is in your nerves when you're sitting on a position and the market starts to toy with you. One tick down, another tick up, back down again, just enough to rattle you. That's the market's way of shaking out the weak. And believe me, the market is always hunting weak nerves. Are you one of them? Or can you sit through the noise until the move reveals itself? When I was younger, I used to let my mind run wild during trades. I'd imagine all the terrible things that might happen if I stayed in, or all the riches I'd have if the trade ran further. You know what that does? It burns your nerve before the market even touches it. Half the battle is fought inside your own head. If your imagination gets the better of you, you'll jump when you should be still, or freeze when you should move. How many times have you cut a winner short because you couldn't stand the pressure of unrealized profit? That's weak nerve, and weak nerve never wins. Now, you might ask, how does a trader build nerve? The same way a soldier builds discipline, by practice, by experience, and by taking losses the right way. Losses, yes, because nerve isn't built by winning. Anybody can feel calm when things go his way. But when you lose, when you see red on your account, when you face the sting of being wrong, that's when nerve is forged. Do you walk away wiser, or do you double down in anger? Your answer to that question decides if you'll last in this game. Every chart is a test of nerve. A rising stock, strong volume, everything says buy. You take it, it runs. Suddenly, the market pulls back. Not enough to break the trend, but enough to rattle your cage. Do you bail out, afraid it'll collapse? Or do you hold, trusting your plan? That's nerve, and it's never easy. Don't fool yourself, it will never be easy. If it were, the world would be full of millionaires. You know what separates the professional from the amateur? It's not better charts, not more news, not even more capital. It's nerve. The professional has trained himself to act without hesitation when the setup is right, and to sit without flinching when the market shakes the tree. The amateur is always jittery, always chasing, always reacting. That difference, that small thing, is everything. Can you see it? The danger is not the market, it's yourself. The danger is your nerve breaking under pressure. A man who loses his nerve sells too soon, buys too late, adds to losers, cuts winners, and finally loses his stake. The market didn't do it, he did it to himself. And it will happen to you if you don't control your nerve. Do you think you're immune? Think again. Every trader faces the same test. I'll tell you another truth: controlling your nerve is controlling your money. Think about it. A trade is nothing more than capital put into motion. If your nerve fails, your capital follows. But if you control your nerve, you control your capital, and by controlling your capital, you control your wealth. That's why I say the road to fortune is paved not with trades, but with nerve. How many traders do you know who could have been rich if only they'd held steady? The hardest thing is, the market doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care if you're nervous, if you're hopeful, if you're scared. The tape keeps printing, the prices keep moving, and the only question is whether you have the nerve to act according to the truth it shows. Can you look at the tape and follow it? No matter what your heart says, that's the game. That's trading. And that's why nerve is king. A man once asked me if I thought trading was a science or an art. I told him it's neither, it's a battle of nerve. The science is there, sure. Patterns, probabilities, setups, they can all be studied. The art, yes, comes in the timing, the execution. But none of it matters without nerve. You can know the chart inside out, but if you can't hold when the market shakes, you'll never see the payoff. Isn't that the truth you've seen in your own trading? Remember, the big money is not in the buying or the selling, it's in the waiting, and waiting demands nerve. The market pays the man who can sit tight through the storm, who can watch the noise without acting on it, who can let a position mature until it bears fruit. The weak sell too soon and regret it. The strong hold with nerve and collect the profit. Which side will you be on? Weak nerves turn profits into losses faster than the market ever will. Think about that for a moment. The market can be wild, it can be deceptive, it can be full of noise and traps, but nothing empties a man's account faster than his own inability to hold steady when pressure mounts. You see, the profit is often there, sitting in your hands waiting to be claimed. But what happens? A tick down, a red candle, a whisper in the news, and suddenly your nerves betray you. You cut too early, or worse, you freeze and let a winner turn into a loser. That's not the market stealing from you, it's your own weakness. Do you see how dangerous that is? I've watched traders ruin themselves, not because they didn't know the game, but because their nerves crumbled at the wrong moment. It doesn't matter how sharp your chart reading is, how perfect your entry was, or how much conviction you had the night before. When the market moves against you even for a short spell, your nerve is the only thing standing between holding the line and throwing away the trade. How many times have you looked back at a chart and said, "If only I had held, I'd have made a fortune"? That's not hindsight, it's weak nerves showing their teeth. Now, understand this, the market's job is to test you. It will give you false starts, retracements, little pullbacks, designed to shake out those who can't stand the heat. That's why I always say the market is a mechanism for transferring wealth from the weak to the strong. And strength here doesn't mean muscles or intellect, it means nerve. The strong have the nerve to hold through the noise, while the weak jump out at the first sign of trouble. Who do you think ends up collecting the profits in the end? Picture it. You spot the breakout, volume comes in, momentum builds, you buy, the stock runs, you're in profit. But suddenly, the market dips a few points, nothing catastrophic, just enough to scare the timid. The weak-nerved trader panics, hits the sell button, and walks away with a small gain or even a scratch. Minutes later, the trend resumes, the breakout runs, and the real profit goes to the trader who had the nerve to stay put. Which trader do you think you'd be in that moment? The truth is, nerves betray more traders than bad analysis ever will. A man can study charts for years, memorize patterns, even build a sharp instinct for price action. But when his money is on the line, when his heart starts beating faster, and the fear of losing gnaws at him, all that knowledge gets thrown out the window. He stops trading the chart and starts trading his emotions. And once that happens, the outcome is already written. Tell me honestly, have you not been guilty of this yourself? Think of your trading account as a reservoir. Each trade you take is a stream flowing in or out. A well-timed entry with poor nerve is like opening a valve too soon. You drain the reservoir before the stream has even begun to swell. The profit is flowing toward you, but you never let it arrive. You interrupt it with your fear. That's why I say weak nerves turn profits into losses. It's not that the setup was wrong. It's that you didn't have the nerve to see it through. The market is full of these little psychological traps. A small pullback looks like the start of a reversal. A sideways pause feels like a collapse waiting to happen. Weak nerves interpret every minor movement as danger. Strong nerves, on the other hand, can distinguish between real warning signs and simple market noise. The difference is not in the chart itself, but in the trader's ability to stay calm. Do you realize how much money slips through fingers because of nothing more than jitters? I've seen traders bail out of a winning position just because the market hesitated for half an hour. They couldn't bear the thought of seeing their floating profit shrink, even slightly. They thought they were protecting their gains, but what they were really doing was cutting themselves off from the larger move. The irony is, by fleeing too soon, they ended up exposing themselves to more trades, more commissions, more mistakes, and more risk. The profit they tried to guard slipped into someone else's pocket. Weak nerves don't just cost you money in one trade, they keep you from ever capturing the big move that builds fortunes. Doesn't that sting when you realize it? Let me tell you something harsh, but true, the market doesn't owe you comfort. If you're waiting for a trade that never tests your nerve, you'll be waiting forever. Every worthwhile move will, at some point, make you doubt yourself. That's its nature. And this is where the weak get separated from the strong. The weak think, If I just had the perfect strategy, I wouldn't feel nervous. But that's a fantasy. No strategy erases the need for nerve. You'll always face uncertainty, you'll always face pressure. The only choice is whether you'll let those feelings control you, or whether you'll control them. Which choice do you think builds wealth? It's also worth remembering that nerve doesn't mean stubbornness. Weak nerves and overconfidence are two sides of the same losing coin. The man with weak nerves sells winners too early, but the stubborn fool clings to losers, telling himself the market will turn. Both lack real nerve, because real nerve isn't about ignoring the market, it's about respecting it without letting fear dictate your actions. The tape speaks. Your job is to listen with steady hands. That steadiness is what I call nerve. There's another side to this too. Weak nerves don't only make you cut winners short, they also make you chase losers longer than you should. How? Because the fear of taking a loss freezes you. You tell yourself, I'll give it a little more time, not because the chart says so, but because your nerves can't handle the sting of admitting you're wrong. And so, what should have been a small scratch becomes a wound, and what should have been manageable becomes a disaster. Have you ever let one bad trade grow into something far worse because you couldn't pull the trigger? That's weak nerves at work again. So you see, weak nerves are a double-edged sword. They cut your winners short and let your losers run. No market could do more damage than that. The market only moves. It doesn't decide how you'll react. You do. And if your nerve is weak, your reaction will betray you every single time. That's why I tell every trader, before you think about mastering the market, master yourself. Look at the great runs in history, the kind that built empires and fortunes. They weren't captured by men with shaky hands. They were captured by men who saw the setup, took the position, and had the nerve to hold while the market tested them. Imagine the nerve it takes to sit through weeks of pullbacks while knowing the larger trend is intact. Imagine the nerve it takes to pyramid into strength when the crowd is screaming that it's too high. That's the nerve that keeps profits from slipping away. Do you think you could hold steady in that storm? Nerve is not some abstract concept. It's the difference between clicking sell too early or waiting for your target. It's the difference between accepting a small loss with grace or letting it swell into something fatal. It's the difference between wealth built steadily over time and an account drained by fear. Weak nerves sabotage every trade at the moment it matters most. They make you abandon winners and embrace losers. And once you see that clearly, you'll realize the market itself is not your greatest enemy you are. If you don't master your nerve, the tape tells the truth. Your nerves decide if you can follow it. That single line holds the whole essence of trading. The market is never shy about showing you what's happening. Every tick, every bar, every swing on the chart is a direct expression of supply and demand. The tape doesn't care about your feelings, your plans, or your hopes. It simply prints the truth of what buyers and sellers are doing in real time. The problem is never the tape. The problem is the trader who reads it and doesn't have the nerve to act on what he sees. How many times have you looked at a chart, seen the clear sign, and then failed to move because your own nerves second-guessed you? The beauty of the tape is that it's impartial. It doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter, it doesn't whisper sweet promises. It just tells you what is. But when a man sits down in front of it, his imagination starts filling the gaps. He sees a pullback and imagines disaster. He sees a breakout and imagines riches. The tape isn't saying either of those things, it's just showing price and volume. Yet the trader interprets it through his nerves, and suddenly the truth gets distorted. Do you see how dangerous it is to let your nerves be louder than the tape? When I say the tape tells the truth, I mean it shows you the balance of power in the market. A strong move on heavy volume is telling you that big money is stepping in. A weak rally with light volume is telling you there's no conviction. A sharp breakdown isn't a suggestion, it's a fact that supply is overwhelming demand. The tape doesn't hide these realities. But how often do traders refuse to believe it? They hope instead, they wish instead, because their nerves can't handle the truth the tape is printing. Have you ever clung to a loser while the tape screamed at you to get out? Weak nerves turn the tape into an enemy. A trader with shaky nerves looks at a retracement and thinks it's the end of the trend. He looks at consolidation and thinks it's stagnation. He can't sit through the noise because his nerves magnify every wiggle into catastrophe. But a trader with steady nerves reads the same tape and sees the difference between noise and signal. He knows a dip in an uptrend is a buying opportunity if volume confirms. He knows sideways movement is often just a resting phase before the next leg. The tape told both traders the same thing. One panicked, the other acted. The only difference was nerve. Which type do you want to be? The tape is merciless in its honesty. If you're wrong, it tells you immediately. If you're right, it rewards you but not without testing you first. That test is where most traders fail, not because the tape was unclear, but because they couldn't trust themselves to follow it. Nerves make a man invent stories the tape never told. He thinks maybe it will turn back, or maybe it's just a fake move, when in fact the tape is already shouting the reality at him. The truth was there, but his nerves clouded his judgment. How many times have you ignored the tape's message because it didn't match the outcome you wished for? Think of trading like listening to a telegram from the market. The tape is the telegram, transmitting pure information. You, the trader, are the interpreter. If you stay objective, you hear the message as it is. If your nerves are weak, you add your own words to it, distorting the meaning. That's why two traders can look at the same chart and see different things. One sees the truth. The other sees what his nerves let him see. And which of those two do you think walks away with profit? The hardest part of tape reading is not spotting the signals, it's acting on them without hesitation. A breakout with heavy volume is obvious. A breakdown with no buyer stepping in is obvious. But taking the trade requires nerve. You know the truth, you see the signal, but do you have the guts to press the button? That's the real test. And when the trade goes against you at first, which it often will, do you have the nerve to trust the tape and hold your position? That's another truth most traders never pass. Let me tell you something. The tape rewards discipline, not wishful thinking. You can't argue with it, you can't bargain with it. If it shows weakness, you respect it. If it shows strength, you respect it. Weak nerves want to negotiate with the market, to twist the truth of the tape into something more comfortable. But the tape won't bend for you. It never has, it never will. The only choice is whether you'll follow its truth or let your nerves talk you out of it. And if you let your nerves win, don't blame the tape it gave you the right answer from the start. Think about the times you've entered a trade and immediately started looking for reasons to doubt it. The tape said strength, but your nerves whispered, maybe it's too late. The tape said weakness, but your nerves whispered, maybe it'll bounce. You start searching for outside opinions, reading news headlines, asking others what they think. That's not tape reading, that's nerve failing you. The truth was right in front of you, but you couldn't trust it because you couldn't trust yourself. Doesn't that sound familiar? A strong trader doesn't need to hope. He doesn't need to ask others. He looks at the tape, reads it, and acts. If it goes against him, he accepts it and gets out. If it goes for him, he holds with nerve until the move is done. That's it. The tape supplies the information. His nerve supplies the steadiness, and the combination produces profit. Strip away the nerve, and suddenly he's just another weak-handed player tossing money back into the pot. Which side of that line do you fall on when the heat turns up? It's important to remember that the tape doesn't predict, it reflects. It shows you what's happening, not what you want to happen. Many traders with weak nerves confuse the two. They think their desires should be confirmed in the tape, and when they're not, they read it wrong. They impose their hopes onto it. But the tape is indifferent to hopes. It simply shows reality. The trader's job is not to rewrite reality, but to respond to it with nerve intact. How often do you catch yourself seeing what you want instead of what is? The longer you trade, the clearer it becomes that the tape's honesty is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it gives you the truth without filters. It's a curse because it forces you to face the truth, and many can't. Weak nerves recoil at harsh truths. Strong nerves embrace them. The market punishes the former and pays the latter. So ask yourself, are you strong enough to follow the truth, even when it stings? In the end, every profitable trade is nothing more than the result of following the tape's truth with steady nerves. Every loss that grows larger than it should, every winner cut short, every opportunity missed, those are the scars of weak nerves ignoring the tape. The difference is not in the chart, not in the tools, not even in the entry. It's in whether you let your nerves block you from following the truth that was in front of you all along. The market shakes out the weak by testing their nerve, not their knowledge. This is something every trader learns sooner or later, often the hard way. The truth is, the market doesn't care how much you've read, how many seminars you've attended, how many indicators you've memorized. All of that is just preparation. But when you place real money on the line, the market's first job is to see if you can hold steady when it moves against you. That's the shakeout. It's not about whether you understand the setup, it's about whether you have the nerve to endure the pressure that comes before the payoff. How many times have you had the knowledge right, but still failed because you couldn't stand the test? Knowledge can be written in books, but nerve is written in scars. You can memorize every pattern under the sun. You can learn volume theory, trend lines, and moving averages, and you can even predict with remarkable accuracy where the next swing should go. But none of that matters if the moment the market jiggles against you, your heart races and you abandon ship. The market knows this. It knows that most men cannot sit through even the smallest pullback. And so it shakes, it dips. It fakes just enough to force the weak out of their positions before continuing in the true direction. Do you realize that's why so many say, "I was right, but I still lost"? That statement, "I was right, but I still lost," is the hallmark of a trader with knowledge but no nerve. He read the chart correctly. He saw the breakout forming. He anticipated the move. But the market tested him with a pullback, a little shakeout, and he couldn't take it. He sold too soon, only to watch the stock run exactly as he expected after he was out. The knowledge was there. What failed was his nerve. Hasn't that happened to you more times than you'd like to admit? The shakeout isn't a trick. It's the market's way of separating participants. Strong hands hold, weak hands fold. That's the rule. The market is ruthless in this respect. It doesn't care that you studied late nights, that you practiced on simulators, that you carefully picked your entry. The test will still come. Sometimes it's a sudden drop right after you buy. Sometimes it's days of sideways action that wear down your patience. Sometimes it's news that rattles confidence. The form changes, but the test is the same. Do you have the nerve to hold your ground when the market tries to push you off balance? The irony is that most traders know enough to win. They really do. The average trader who spends even a year studying charts has enough knowledge to identify a good setup. But knowledge is not what the market measures in the heat of the moment. The market measures nerve. And because most traders never train their nerve, they fall at the very test that determines success. Do you see now why books alone never made anyone rich? I've said many times that my biggest wins never came without being tested. Every great trend I ever rode tried to buck me off in the early stages. Prices would whip around. Volume would shift suddenly. Minor retracements would make me question my decision. But those moves weren't signs of failure. They were signs of the market shaking loose the faint-hearted. Only those with the nerve to endure stayed long enough to capture the full swing. And let me tell you, the swing always rewards the strong and punishes the weak. Where would you stand in such a moment? Consider the psychology behind a shakeout. Imagine thousands of traders entering a breakout. Some have deep conviction, some are just chasing, and most are nervous. The market dips a few points. The nervous crowd panics, selling in fear. Their selling pressure creates a temporary weakness that looks real. But behind the scenes, strong hands are buying what the weak hands gave away. Once the weak are shaken out, the path is clear for the true move to continue. This isn't theory, it happens day after day. and it explains why the majority never catch the meat of a move. Their nerve gives out just when they needed it most. Haven't you been among that majority before? Another thing to notice is that shakeouts don't always come in dramatic moves. Sometimes they're subtle, a slow grind against your position, nothing sharp enough to scream danger, but enough to drain your patience. Hours, days, even weeks of sideways motion. The trader with weak nerve grows restless, doubts his analysis, and exits out of boredom or fear. And then, as if the market was waiting for his departure, the breakout finally comes. The knowledge to see the setup was correct, but the nerve to sit through the test was lacking. Isn't that one of the cruelest lessons this game teaches? A man with strong nerve understands the shakeout for what it is. He doesn't mistake it for the end of the trend, nor does he let it rattle him into acting prematurely. He knows that before the market rewards him, it will make sure he's fit to receive the reward. He knows that weak hands must be washed out before a move can run cleanly. And because he knows this, he uses the shakeout as confirmation, not as discouragement. Where others see failure, he sees opportunity. The tape didn't change the difference's nerve.